Barry Powless, and I was born in Syracuse, New York, and my birth date is April 8th, 1957. I'm 65 years old.
What nation are you?
I'm from the Onondaga Nation.
Onondaga Nation.
Yeah, located just south of Syracuse, New York.
And you have one of the greatest stick makers in the world.
Oh yes, Elfie Jocks. Yeah, actually, I have a stick from his father. I used to get Louis. Yeah, yeah.
Louis Jocks. Yeah. Who was the first person who introduced you to the game?
Well, that would have to have been my dad. I guess we come from a lacrosse family. My great-grandfather, Welcome Powless, played until he was 60 years old. He dressed for games. His son, my grandfather, Irving Powless Sr., played in the old Pro League in the 1936.
Wow.
Yeah, that was in New York State. Yeah, he was one of their stars. Yeah. And then my dad, he played until he was 40. But as a family, we would go to all his games. We would travel to all his away games. So introduction to the game was always there. In fact, when I got my first lacrosse stick, my dad took me up to the old Chisholm factory. Yeah. And I remember going through that factory. That was awesome. I mean, there was sticks galore there, right? Yeah. So that's when I first got my own stick when I was 10 years old. And since then, I'd go with practices with my dad. You know, I'd run with the team and everything. So, and luck would have it, I think I was 13 years old. We were at a away game and playing the Senecas, had a Saturday night game and then a Sunday afternoon game. Not many of the players showed up for the Sunday afternoon game. There was only 4 runners and a goalie. So my dad asked my mother, got permission to say, you know, can Barry dress?
How old were you?
I was 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she reluctantly said yes, and so I put the pads on. The gloves came up to here, right? Because they were those old gloves. And yeah, I went out there, and so my dad told me, he says, just stand at center. We'll play 4-on-4. When we get the ball, we'll throw the ball up to you, you know, and hopefully you can go down and score. So that went on for about 5-6 offensive shifts, right? And the goalie would save it. The fans are kind of, they're laughing because they're loving it, this little guy running down. But it was all good until I scored. And so then after that, they kept drifting a guy back to eventually they were playing 4-on-4 the rest of the game. And we actually won the game.
Where was that game played?
That was in, with Cattaraugus against the Pinewoods men's team.
Okay, so this was an outdoor box?
It was, yeah, most of the teams played outdoor. That was in the old North American Lacrosse Association, NALA. Yeah.
Wow.
NALA, yeah.
So I know Kevin Alexander I interviewed at one point, and he was the same thing. He got brought in like as a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And what, you know, for both of you, what a great way to start the game.
Right, yeah.
The game.
And after I scored, I remember getting hit after, and because actually they know I was a threat. And I was like the scarecrow, like my gloves were over there, my shoes over here, and I wore glasses. My glasses were over there, right?
Oh, wow.
And there was no, you know, there was no quarters given, right? So.
Not once you prove yourself.
Yeah.
If you're not scoring, well, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I could do everything. Yeah.
Oh, that's something.
Yeah.
You must have played the outdoor box in Onondaga. I've been there a number of times.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, in '90, that's where actually we played. And then when Louis Jacques was coaching, they moved the team to Syracuse War Memorial. So they would go back and forth. And when I was coming up, they practiced the outside box. They had lights and everything, and that was the place to be. You know, during Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays was down at the box and watch the boys go at it. I mean, there were fights and everything else. They were so competitive. Yeah, you know, it was a gathering place for all the community. Everybody had their favorite spot to stand. My grandmother, my mother's side, her name was Mabel. She would have this one spot in the shade that she would always stand, and she would have a little pencil and she would mark the score down, because that was before they had like a scoreboard up there. And so, and you could see her pencil marks, you know, for each game, you know.
Wow.
And
that area has been the ball field, the ball field area,
right,
forever,
right,
for Onondaga,
right.
And the great Seneca Prophet
Yeah, Handsome Lake. Yeah.
Handsome Lake. Yeah, I've been by he's like the only stone
Right.
grave I've ever
Right.
seen.
Yeah.
You know, is right there, and I've seen that.
Yeah, and before he passed away, he actually, the Onondagas, they played a game of lacrosse, and he's benefited when he
for
came.
a medicine game. For
Medicine
him.
game, right.
And he then before 2015, they built the beautiful new arena right near there as well. You know, which is, from what people tell me, gets used all the time.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
It's a multi-sport facility, so they'll have like the volleyball in there, you know, different events. And actually, I think they're going to have some NLL teams in there before the season starts.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I read that in
Well, I think
like a
even
newsletter.
Aquasasni is going to see some teams come.
Yeah, they
Like, it
did
must
that
be a
like
bit of- oh,
yeah,
that just happened.
yeah, that just happened. Yeah,
okay.
so
Yeah.
which is good, you know, give the you know, exposure to the different you know, Native communities, which is great.
Yeah, that's a great thing to do. And I went down to the new facility that was built, and people were throwing the ball around at like 11 at night.
Yeah.
You know, in there, the lights were on.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just go, wow, you know,
Yeah.
wow, this
Yeah.
is getting some good use here, you know. And,
Yeah.
and
That old box there, that the outside one, I spent countless hours, you know, when I was growing up, hot summer evenings, or days, just myself and lacrosse ball, and, you know, throwing the ball at the net, trying to mimic the shots that I had seen, or different shots that my dad would tell me, you know, and just over and over and over, you know. So it was either that, then we'd go home. We had a porch on our trailer, and my dad had spray painted the goal on it, right? So they always knew where I was because they always could hear the thump.
well, that's why you achieved what you've achieved, because you were diligent.
Yeah.
You know, with the game, you know. And I'm remembering other stories as we talk, but my good friend Alfie Jacks, you know, is right down the road from that outdoor box, and Oren Lyons is right across from it. And did you get to go to Alfie's workshop over the years?
Oh yeah. Well, as I mentioned, my first stick when I was playing high school lacrosse, his dad made that stick for me, Louis.
Yes.
And so I'd go there and, you know, pick out a frame.
Was it the same building?
Same building.
It was.
Same
okay.
building, yeah.
Okay.
Pick out a frame, you know, and he would finish it off and he'd net it. So I'd watch everything that he, you know, that they were doing.
Yeah.
And it come to a point, even when I moved away out west, you know, I'd get some catgut from Alfie and I'd take it with me because, you know, I could string the whole net. Yeah. But I remember one time I was there getting the stick from Louis when I was going to SU.
Yeah.
And
what year did you start SU? Syracuse?
76 was my freshman year.
We were right on the same. Yeah.
And that was the time when the Super Light 2 just came out too.
Yeah.
Right. So I remember we got 2 Super Light 2s, and I had my new stick that Louis made, right?
Yeah.
But while I was there, I was, you know, just wandering around his workshop, and there was this box off to the side, big box. So I remember going over there because it said Boston Bolts. And I said, I didn't know that Louis was involved with the Boston Bolts, maybe like a manager, because there was all kinds of pads in there. They had the fibers in there, they had gloves. So I just randomly picked up a pair of gloves and I had Wolfong on there. You know, who would have known, you know, years later he'd be my coach in Coquitlam, or one of the coaches, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he would coach with Frankie Nielsen.
You know, those things don't happen by accident.
Right.
You know? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And now, was there a Powless that played at Syracuse before you got there?
I'm not too sure, right? Because none of our relatives that I know went to Syracuse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
who might have been there?
Well,
before?
we had there was Oliver Hill. He was there.
Oliver Hill.
Yeah.
Really?
He played at SU. Yeah.
That would have been way back, right?
Yeah.
Like that would have been in the
Ron Hill.
Ron Hill.
Yeah,
okay.
he played there. Yeah, and then you had the doctors, Ron and Laverne Doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember going down there and watching. Well, probably my senior year in high school. A gentleman by the name of Judd Smith. He was their big attackman down there, right?
That name.
And then my freshman year, it was his senior year, and I don't know if we played in Cortland or we hosted them, but I was like, wow, I'm playing against Judd Smith.
You got to play against him, which is
yeah. And O'Hara's B.J. O'Hara.
At Hobart,
at
yeah.
Hobart, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those are the type of players, that I watched coming up. I always wanted to play, Division I. My dad took me to SU's game, and my grandfather, we would go together and watch the Lafayette games, the high school, watch the local high school games. And he was a man of few words, but he'd sit there and he'd have this little chuckle for different plays that he would see, miscues, right?
Yeah.
And I never knew that he played pro. He never said anything.
Wow.
Until
Really?
Yeah, until me and my cousin were helping him build a log cabin, restore one. And when it was all done, he put this picture up of himself that was taken in '36, and he was using a left-handed stick. He was a lefty, and it was a left-handed stick. Wow. And I looked at it, and I said, "Grandpa, is this you?" And he goes, "Yeah." So then he started telling me stories about what he played.
You must have been amazed.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, was that the league that played like in Geneva, Rochester, maybe
Hornell?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Because Orrin Lyons told me stories about him going to watch his dad play, and he loved going to Geneva because they could go for a spaghetti dinner in Geneva, New York. That was a big deal.
Right.
At an Italian restaurant.
Yeah, because my grandpa played first for the Rochester Senecas, I believe they were called.
Okay.
And then he played for Syracuse Red Devils.
Okay, and they played right across to Buffalo.
Yeah.
There were pro.
Right.
In Geneva, New York, I always heard from another side, the Krause family, from the Simmons Krause.
Right.
Their dad used to tell me, because I played with all three of the boys, two of them at Hobart, one out in Orange County.
Oh, okay.
I played with all three of them at some point. He used to tell me that the blood used to be just flowing from the chicken wire. And that always stuck, on the armory floor.
Right.
The armory floor in Geneva.
Right.
That was the. So that must have been quite something.
Oh yeah.
That
it was a winter league, because I remember talking to Cap about that, and about my grandfather playing. And Cap says he remembers his dad coming back, because the guys from Six Nation, they played for Hornell.
Oh, okay.
So he remembers.
Where's Hornell roughly?
Roughly, I think that's in between Rochester and Buffalo, like the southern tier.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But he remembers the door opening, at say 2, 3 in the morning, right? The snow, the wind's coming in. You hear the laughter from the car, right? We'll see you next week,
They loved it.
Yeah, they loved it. Yeah, it was like the old winter league back then. Yeah.
Real adventure. To do that and.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did they build the new arena where the Onondaga Redbirds play out of now? And
that was in 2001, I believe.
Okay, so you were well past
there. Actually, I was the first coach, for them, because we changed our name from the Onondaga Athletic Club, OAC, to Onondaga Redhawks.
Redhawks?
Yeah.
Redhawks.
Yeah. And
Is it Redhawks now or Redbird?
No, it's Redhawks.
Redhawks.
Yeah, that's what we changed it to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then my job took me to live out in Western New York, and so that was the last time I was basically affiliated with with coaching the team, right? So.
Okay. Well, let's get into a little bit of your background as a player. You played high school. What high school did you play?
That'd be Lafayette High School.
Oh, okay. Where Alfie Jacks went to Lafayette
Alfie,
as well?
Travis Cook.
Travis Cook went there too. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He came. They invited him down. I think they're related, but. Not Alfie, Louis invited him down and to go to school at Lafayette.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Travis
Lafayette has a long-standing name.
Yeah, I think it was '62 was their first season in lacrosse. But my senior year, '75, I was a high school All-American at Lafayette.
Which is really saying something, And then you went to. You played attack at Syracuse.
Yes, I was attack.
Who were some of your attack teammates?
My high school teammate Larry Stoyer, he went to Syracuse. There was a Tim O'Hara.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was there. We ran attack, and then there was a I forget his name. He was from James O'Dewitt from that Allen area. Because when we actually started in 76, when we went to SU, there was a big recruitment by Simmons to keep a lot of the local talent, in Syracuse instead of it going all over. like Donahue.
Yeah, Donahue, I remember.
Desco, Desco
defenseman.
was a freshman, the first year I went in.
Yeah.
And there was a Udovich, he was a big midi defenseman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was quite a few of us, that played high school against one another, in Central New York.
Came together.
They came together at SU team, yeah.
You won the North American Lacrosse Association Championship for Onondaga OAC, is when you were with them.
Yeah, that was actually the last year of that NALA. That was 78, I believe. And then because the following year, that's when the Can-Am League was born.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, and then you went to Cornwall and played as well, right? There?
Yeah, what happened is actually I have to credit Louis Jacques for that, because his friend Benedict, Frank Benedict came down, and they were talking. They said, "Is anybody here that could help with our junior team out in Akwesasne?" And so Louis gave Frank my name, and so Frank came to the house and we were talking. And at the time, I was going to go to school in the fall, but looking for some maybe work, whatever, in the summer. So he said, well, you can come up, you can work at the factory, because he was running the lacrosse stick factory up there.
Round Point.
Yeah, the Round Point one, right. Yeah. And you can play with our team. So I would spend my summers up in Akwesasne and played up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He played in the first ever World Box Championships. That was kind of the predecessor to the World Indoor Lacrosse.
Right.
And we've done a story actually on that whole
Right.
event.
Yeah, I saw that.
And,
it was very good.
Yeah, which again, trying to capture that one,
right.
For posterity.
That 1980 tournament was a eye-opening tournament for a lot of us, because we were playing at different nations, Tuscaroras, Senecas, Mohawks, right? And then when we came together out in British Columbia, we actually went to see a Victoria and Coquitlam game. This is before the tournament started, right? And I think all of us were amazed at the level of play that was there, right? And we're like,
they love their lacrosse,
right? And we're like, this is the type of lacrosse that's there. And I was like, how do I get into this?
And that team, the North American native team,
right?
Squamish players. It was a lot of guys from back east,
right?
But then the Squamish joined as well. And so
the way they set it up, we made a team, and then initial team of 23 guys. Then we went out on the West Coast. We knew we'd be picking up at least 6 players, from North Shore. So we had 2 games against each other, and you had to make then the final squad. Yeah.
How did that work out with forming that team? Were people disappointed probably?
Well, yeah, we had guys that didn't make the team. We had one guy just took off to see relatives in Seattle.
See you later.
See you later deal, right?
Yeah.
But it was a great, how would you say, looking at that type of lacrosse out there, right? And playing in the final was like 8,000 people. Most I ever played at that time at the Pacific Coliseum, where the Canucks played. The North Shore people had the drums going, and it was amazing atmosphere.
And your team did very well.
Yeah, we actually were ahead 4-2 at the end of the first period, right?
Yeah.
And then didn't go our way at the end, but we hung right in there. I think it was 16-11 at the final.
Was that Canada West you were playing?
No, we were playing Coquitlam. Because what they did, they put the first
place team. They were representing
team,
Canada West.
Canada West was represented by whoever was in first place by that time. Same with the East. So you had Brooklyn in there, and you had Coquitlam.
Yes. That's right. And then you actually went back in '81, right, to play for the Salmonbellies?
Well, what happened is that again, that 1980 tournament was like a mile mark for me, right?
Yeah.
That I got recruited to go back to play for First North Shore, and under the premise that Frank Baker, he was going to build to win the President's Cup and then petition the WLA to go into the WLA. So I said, great, I'll go play Senior B, then next year we'll go play Senior A. But we came in 3rd at the President's Cup. I won the MVP of the President's Cup.
Wow.
But during that summer, we were affiliated with New West. So we would play up with New West.
So you were allowed to play.
You're right. So when we came, the Mann Cup. So when we
Cup.
came back, there was 2 of us, Jeff Gill and myself. They picked up So we played in Game 4 against Brooklyn.
Yeah, which is a real...
Yeah.
And you played at Queen's Park
At Queen's Park, right.
On the wood floor.
On the wood floor.
That's like sacred ground.
It was
you know?
Wayne Goss's last game he ever played.
Is that right?
Yep.
Wow.
Right.
Wow,
and then the following year, I played full time with the Bellies. Right.
Wow.
And Wayne was the coach. He started out as the coach, then he had that accident. Yeah.
Which is, I saw Wayne just when I was out for the inductions watching that. I just saw him again.
And I had big shoes to fill because I took his spot on the power play.
Wow, yeah. People be looking and going,
yeah, yeah.
But
yeah. He told me once, he goes, Barry, you don't have to shoot so hard. And he goes, try the bounce shot. I guess that was his favorite shot. So I incorporate the bounce shot in there, because Wayne Goss said, you got to try the bounce shot,
Better try the
bounce shot.
So then we go, you're playing kind of for the North Shore Indians in '84, right?
Yeah.
And so you spent a lot of time out west over the summers, like.
Well, I lived out there for 10 years.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You lived out there. So you were out there. Right. You just weren't going out for the season.
No. Actually, the first year that I drove out with a friend from Seneca and Jeff Gill. As we're coming through the Rocky Mountains, it's April, so everything's gray, right?
Yep.
So we come down the mountains into the valley, right?
Valley.
And BC, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the Oz, the cherry trees are in bloom, everything's green and flowers, it's like something.
Well, where are we?
Where are we? Yeah. It was awesome.
And we'll jump ahead a little bit.
Sure.
But you came back and played for Fergus in 1990?
Yeah, well, what happened is when I was with the Bellies, Bellies and Fergus were like the two oldest lacrosse clubs in Canada.
Yep.
And so they wanted to
Brampton's pretty old too.
Yeah. So they wanted to have a competition. They call it the Pioneer Cup. And so the first, I think they only did it once. It was in Fergus. So that's when I met Mac Mason, right?
Okay.
I made a contact there. Didn't know I'd be playing for Fergus after that, because that was in '92. They had the Pioneer Cup. So when I moved back, I heard that Fergus would be hosting, right? So I called Mac up and I asked if they're looking for any left-handers on his team. He said, "Sure, come on up."
That's the great thing about the sport. You could get a lot of experiences in a lot of different ways.
Fergus is a nice little town. They had this one restaurant called Mike's Burgers, I believe it was called. It was just a greasy spoon, but they put all the team pictures up there that had won.
It was the unofficial museum for the place, right?
So they said, well, hopefully if you guys win in '90, you'll get your team picture at Mike's.
And that means a lot, though. Like, there's certain places.
Right. Yeah. And after you won, they had a parade with fire trucks and all, so it was awesome.
Pretty cool. Yeah. And then I'm looking here, and then you played 1990 in Perth for the Iroquois national team.
Right. No, that was the first Iroquois national team that was allowed to play in the World Games. Yeah.
First one.
So that was a big deal, for the organization. And there was only two of us that had played in '80 that made the '90 team. That was David Bray. He's Seneca.
Yeah.
He went to Cornell.
Yeah, I know that name.
So we ran on the same line in '80 in the box tournament, and we ran on the same midfield line in '90.
How old were you guys then?
I was, 90, I would have been 32.
Holy cow.
And he was 30 years older. He was like 33.
Wow, you guys are still pumping it out.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that uncommon now to see guys in their late 30s playing NLL, but that's the offense-defense part. There's less stress and that kind of thing.
Right.
Then 1991, Buffalo Renegades. You're the first overall pick, and you played for them.
Yeah, that was the Canadian version of the NLL.
Oh, okay.
And it only lasted 1 year. There was 4 clubs in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then the next year.
The Bandits.
So they came on like gangbusters.
Oh,
with crowd and everything.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning, right?
Well, at the old odd, it had like 16,000, and so what I learned later. is that the management of the Sabres gave the same percentage of income to the salespeople. So they said, well, if you sell these tickets, we're going to give you the same commission.
Okay.
So they went out and sold it gangbusters.
I was smart.
Yeah, yeah. So it was like an 8-game season, right? 12-game season, 4 home games.
4 home games, yeah.
So the crowd started like maybe 6,000, then it went 8, and then it went 16.
Were they
sold
winning?
out. Yeah,
that always helps. Like,
yeah.
Was Les Bartley involved?
Les Bartley was the head coach. Yeah, him and Meridian.
I was I was involved with them with the Toronto Rock when we got them started.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I know what the power that Les had, and Johnny is just always promoting and and you're 2 great people to run a franchise.
Yeah, it was a great organization. Yeah, so I was, again, it was on I was at 33 then, so I was on the tail end of my, how would you say, prime, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I was lucky to, very fortunate to get on the club.
To get to experience that.
Well, yeah. Because in 74, 75, when I was playing junior, after our practices, we'd get in the car of Mike Benedict, and he would run up to Montreal to watch, Ernie Mitchell play, right?
Yeah, Ernie Mitchell was the goalie.
Yeah, he was the goalie.
Jim Bishop was the coach.
Yeah, and I think, wasn't Davis, was he still playing?
Johnny Davis? Yeah, I think he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, which he was a legend.
Right, because, whatever sport you play, if you have an opportunity to play pro, right? Yeah. Whatever level, of course, you do anything, you do it, right?
Just to experience
that.
So how long did you play in the new NLL? How long did you play there?
That was just the initial year.
That first year?
Yeah, just the first year.
At least you got a year in there.
Got a year in there, right? Experienced it, and then 3 years later, the Rochester Nighthawks came along, right? And so I was able to interview for that position.
Okay.
And that's when I became the head coach for Rochester.
Got to be very popular, and
right.
They didn't have as big a building to fill,
no,
but they did a good job.
Right. They only had 6,000 initially. Then he added on. After that, I think they're at 9,000.
And so let's jump, amazing playing career, and we'll get into some of the honors for that a little bit later. But the coaching and admin side, talk about a few highlights in your whole lacrosse career around that side.
The coaching aspect?
Coaching and admin, those sides, yeah.
Well, actually, my first coaching experience was in Janesville, DeWitt, which is a little suburb of Syracuse, as a modified assistant coach. I did that for 2 years. And then I got an opportunity to be the head coach with Lafayette as their modified. Was that for 2 years.
What is modified for Canadians?
That would be 7th and 8th grade.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
7th and 8th grade.
And so my third year, I was asked to be the head coach for the Lafayette high school team, the varsity. Yeah. So I did that for 3 years, and I had an opportunity to coach my youngest brother, Neil. He's junior and senior year.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And then that led to, in 93, our nation had a team in the Iroquois Lacrosse Association, because at that time, not many communities had lacrosse. For whatever reason, there was no men's lacrosse. Some weren't playing for 3 or 4 or some even 5 years. There was no teams. At Onondaga, there was no teams for 5 years.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah. So in 93, they formed the Iroquois Lacrosse Association, and I was like a player assistant coach with them the first year, and then I'd be like a player coach after that with them. And we did that and we actually went out to BC. That very first year we won the league, and we had an all-star, because we were classified like senior C, so we could pick up players from all over the league, because it was our first year coming into the CLA as an association.
Okay. As a high school kid, I'm from Saskatchewan, but I grew up in Long Island, and I was Canada's only field player at one point, pure field player, because in '78.
Oh, yeah.
I was the only one. And I didn't even know I was Canadian anymore.
No.
He always has to do this. So,
And then I got a phone call out of the blue and saying, would you be interested in interviewing for the head coach for this new expansion team we're having in Rochester? And so I said, the Nighthawks. And they said, why, sure. So I interviewed, and then I got a call from Russ Klein.
Yes.
And he was partnered with Fitch, I believe his last name. Fritz, yes. And they said, we selected you to be the head coach, for Rochester. So that was
wow.
So I coached Rochester for 3 years.
What was that like?
That was crazy. Because I had players,
there's
phone
pressure
calls.
too, right?
Pressure, well, yeah. But I had, we had an open tryout. So as I describe it, we had players of all kinds of shapes and conditions and experience showing up,
Everybody.
Everybody, right? And we whittled it down, and we had a good nucleus of field players and some native players. We got at that time, you only could have 5 Canadian players on your roster.
Oh, okay.
So I know Dietrich was one of them.
Yes.
Lemon was another one. Driscoll.
Yeah.
And I think Peter Part was there first year.
Okay.
And there was one other, I forget. But just before the season.
What year was that? I'm sorry.
That was 1995.
Okay.
And at the time, the year before, Paul and Gary were playing for Philly. But apparently Paul petitioned the league to say, well, I live in Syracuse, it'd be a lot easier for me if I played for Rochester. So they moved him to Rochester.
Oh, okay.
So they made us a legitimate contender right off the bat. Yeah.
And Rochester did a great job as an organization.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they were affiliated with the Americans, right?
Right.
Rochester Americans, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a good fit there because everything was in place already.
Yeah, they had a central administration to handle both teams, and then they actually brought a field team in at some point as well as part of the mix. I remember that.
Right.
And,
we practiced at the old Armory in Rochester, and we had our early struggles coming together. Because it was very diverse as far as the indoor experience. The field players had none, right?
Yeah,
but we had some big names.
Game
oh, it is, right? So you're trying to look for the most aggressive type of field players, right? And but I think we finished 4-4 in the regular season, and then we beat Boston, and then we went to the final against Philly. Now at that time, you hosted a game by attendance. So we had no chance of hosting any playoff game. So all our games were on the road. Huh. And so we played Philly in Philly for the final on my birthday in April, and we lost in overtime.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was.
Wow. What a.
But it was a great experience, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so who was the best field player adapting to the box game during that time, like that 3 years that you had?
Well, we had Tim Sudan was from Rochester, right? He went to UMass, right?
Okay.
And he came aboard. We had Matt Ryder from Syracuse.
Okay.
He was an All-American.
Okay. And did he adapt well?
Yeah, he adapted well, right? And there was a couple other, Reggie Thorpe.
Okay, yeah.
He played defense, for
Reggie
SU.
Thorpe. Yeah.
And I remember going to his apartment because he was just graduated from SU. And I knocked on his door and I introduced myself and I said, be interested to see if you're interested in coming playing defense for this new pro team in Rochester. And he goes, where do I sign?
Oh, everybody.
Yeah.
You want to do that,
So, but we had a good group of collegiate guys that came in, and they had to obviously learn the game. And the biggest thing was teaching them, you just can't throw the ball from all kinds of crazy angles, right? Because if the goalie is actually a halfway decent goaltender, you're just going to hit him. You'll never beat him. Yeah.
That's right.
But everything sort of came together. The second year we lost in the semis, and then the third year, my last year, we beat Buffalo in Buffalo for the championship.
Wow.
It was sold out, like 19,000 crazy fans.
I remember going to games there.
Yeah.
And it was It was unbelievable.
That adrenaline rush that you when you get, right?
Yeah.
There's no other feeling in the world.
Yeah.
When you
full house.
Yeah.
And good competition.
Oh yeah,
you
for
add
sure.
that together, and it's pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, let's look at some of the awards that you've won over time, and you can comment on those. And Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame player category in 1999, which is a real honor. There's some great. You're in the place right now,
right?
And,
right.
A lot of great players inducted over the years into this place.
Yeah, I remember getting the phone call, and at the time I was doing sales, outside sales, and all the rest of my appointments, I had this big grin on my face. Right?
Well, yeah. It's,
I mean, as a player, you never think of that's the ultimate goal, right? I want to be in the Hall of Fame or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But it was quite an honor. I'm so humbled to be amongst and considered with all these great athletes and lacrosse players, in this hall.
Oh yeah. And then we'll jump over like your Greater Syracuse Sports Hall of Fame, U.S. Lacrosse Upstate New York chapter, which is a big deal again because the power of that area.
Right.
There's amazing players coming out.
The year I was inducted with the Greater Syracuse Sports was the same year that Gary Gate was also inducted.
Okay, so that was quite.
That was quite, to be, in that presence, the same class. I went back to see their Hall of Fame exhibit, and I gave them a stick from field lacrosse, my high school stick, and it was in the same case as Jim Brown's. So I said, well, it's pretty good company.
That's pretty good company too. And being from Onondaga, the stories of Jim Brown coming down with Oren, to play in the outdoor box.
Right.
And I always try to remember the name of the guy. He was a little 150-pound guy whose claim to fame was he took Jim Brown down twice with a hip check. Do you remember the name of that fellow?
That fellow taught me how to take a cross check when I was 10 years old. That was my father.
That was your dad who did that?
That was my dad.
I'm so glad I asked that question.
Yeah.
Because I remember hearing that, and it was just like he had the perfect hip check. And and obviously Jimmy Brown was all power.
Oh yeah.
And so if you had to do it right, or else you're going to be freight trained, over there.
Well, my dad taught me how to take a cross check. He also taught me how to deliver the hip check, right? Because it was legal back in those days.
Back then.
And he learned it from his father.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So this was a family.
Yeah, it's a family trait, the hip check. And you're hitting the player in this area here. You're not bending over or anything. Right. You're actually throwing your hip into them. That's how you would deliver it. So what happened?
So that was your father?
That was my father. My grandfather was coaching the Onondaga team. Jim Brown and Oren was their senior year in 57, so they allowed him to play lacrosse his last year. So Oren asked Jim, well, wouldn't it be great if you come down and as a fundraiser for our club, Onondaga, and play with us against the Mohawks? So they set it all up, right? They get a call, say the game's going to be like at 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. No Mohawks, they didn't show.
Oh my Lord.
Here comes Jim Brown, rolls in in his Cadillac, everybody's there, tickets were sold, right? So like, what are we going to do? So
was that while he's just leaving Syracuse?
But
he had
57.
He had a caddy.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. So and the box was just below Louis Jacques' house.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where his shop is. That's where the box was, where the boys played. Yeah. So what they said is, we'll split the team up in two.
And play a game.
And Jim will go on one team. Jim was on the other team. Oren and my dad were on another team. Okay. So as my dad told the story, he never saw a player that played just predominantly field adapt so quickly to the physical game of the box. He goes, there was a ball in the corner. He went in there in the scrum. He come out with the ball. With his speed, he just outlegged everybody. He goes, I was staying at center, and Oren was in the net. Now, Oren and my dad are juniors, so back then they would call one another Sonny. Sonny Irv, Sonny Oren. Okay. So Oren yelled to my dad, get him, Sonny, right? So my dad's standing there sizing up Jim Brown running down the ball. And all Jim Brown saw was a 140-pound man standing there. I'll just run by him, right? So my dad timed his feet, and he delivered the hip check, and he hit Brown. My dad said it was like hitting an oak tree. He was that solid. People that watched the game, all they saw was legs go like this. And when he hit, there was a cloud of dust. Where Brown hit, another little poof where my dad hit. Ball rolled out.
And Dad was okay.
Yeah, my dad was okay. They said 5 minutes in the box playing lacrosse, and Jim Brown's laying in the ground.
Wow.
Yeah. So my dad's best buddy, his name was Bob Venerables, who teaches the Native American program at Cornell. He's retired now.
Right.
But Venerables was in New York City, and there was this book signing by Jim Brown. So he bought a book, and Venerables knew the story, right?
Yep.
So he gets up to the table, and Jim Brown says, "Okay, want me to sign your book, your name?" So Bob gives him his name. He goes, "I got a question for you." He goes, "Is it true that you were knocked down by Chief Irving Powless?" Because my father's one of our traditional leaders. By Chief Irving Powless in a lacrosse game at Onondaga. And now you can imagine what Brown's going through, because this persona of never being knocked down on a lacrosse field, a game, right? And so eyes and ears are looking at him, and Venerable says Brown slowly lifted his eyes, and he looked at him. He goes, "Chief Powless is an honorable man. If he said that happened, it probably happened."
Isn't that great?
Yeah. So Bob Venerable said, "That's good enough for me, you know."
That's the only story about a check that everybody talks about big hits.
Right.
But that's the one that's probably the granddaddy of them all.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
who it was?
Yeah. And then my dad
involved?
was telling that after the game, he wanted to know who hit him, so he asked Doran, "Well, who was that little mosquito that hit me?" Because my dad only weighed like 135, 140 pounds soaking wet. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. And, that story's come my way a number of times. Mm-hmm. So it's,
right.
Yeah.
Oh, it's legit, yeah.
Legit and bona fide.
Yeah.
So, well, Barry, we're kind of coming to the end of our interview. Is there anything you want to leave about the game or its future or whatever you want to talk about? I'll give you the floor for a few minutes here to...
Okay, well, there's a couple of things that, with myself, as we all know, it's the creator's game, right? And played for the creator's enjoyment. That's what we're told by our elders. We call the game in our language Dehon Chikwaye, which means they bump hips, okay? And we still play the medicine game for all players so they don't get hurt, and for the playing in the good spirit of the game at Onondaga every spring. You have to use the wooden stick, and there's no pads. It's basically...
I was just down there for that with Alfie. And
okay.
Oren showed up as well and presented to Alfie there.
Yeah. No, that's that wooden stick festival. Right.
Yeah.
But this is different. This is actually a spiritual game that we play.
Okay.
Medicine game.
Pure medicine game.
But we actually we play that every spring, for the benefit of all lacrosse players, so that they play the good mind, right? Yes. And that's still carrying on. And I think wherever lacrosse may take itself, I know they've got this new format now, the sixes they're calling them.
Yeah.
So whatever transition lacrosse does make, I'm sure in our native communities, we're still going to hold that creator's game, true to our heart, and play that aspect of the game, to fulfill our commitment to, as we call our creator, right? Because it is his game.
Yeah, there's the medicine game,
and then
there's the sport.
Right.
But the sport has the medicine in it.
Right. Yeah. Interestingly enough, when we play the medicine game, it's the first team that scores 3 goals. And if you look in history, like the Montreal Lacrosse Club, if they played, say, the Ganawag Indians, it was 3-1, 3-2. And even some of the local colleges, you look at scores back then, and there was 3-1 or 3-2, right?
That was the original.
That was the original way to who determined who would win.
Yes.
First team to score 3 goals. Yeah.
Right. Yep.
But I'm sure the game's going to evolve into who knows what, right? So.
Yeah, but the medicine will be there forever, and it has to be honored.
Correct.
Every spring.
Correct.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to say? That is the essence of the game. What you
right.
Should say. Hard to beat that.
Yeah. No, it's just that I view my career being very respectful for the game, very humbled for the 6 Hall of Fames that I was in. That just amazes me, with all the great athletes that are in there. But it's something that that I cherish. The ups and downs. Not everything was a bed of roses, in anybody's career, right? But the main thing that we have to remember that there's always a spot for somebody, that wants to play lacrosse.